Thank you, everybody, for joining for another episode. Today, I am joined by Jan Lehman, an executive coach, productivity expert, and speaker. She is a sought-after presenter on a variety of organizing and productivity topics. Her company, CTC Productivity, is a Twin Cities-based, women-owned and operated business. Their mission is to help individuals and businesses understand their organizational challenges and provide self-sustaining solutions that improve productivity and reduce stress. The roots of Jan's business acumen and people-first attitude can be traced back to her formal education. She earned a business degree in operations and systems management with a minor in psychology from Indiana University Kelley School of Business. CTC is the perfect forum for her to blend her people skills and productivity expertise. Prior to launching CTC, Jan worked for a number of Fortune 100 companies, including Kraft Foods, Accenture, the CEC, and that's the Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, and World Book Encyclopedia and United Airlines. Jan's business, CTC Productivity, helps clients all over the country. She is currently on the National Board of the National Association of Productivity and Organizing Professionals, and she was recently named in 2018 Women Who Lead in the Minnesota Business Magazine. So I am excited to get into this conversation with Jan. Jan, thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Chris.
And so my first question is operations and systems management with a minor in psychology. That seems like an interesting. I'm always interested in what people minor in, or even if it's an unofficial minor. How does that? How did that decision come about with packaging that into the degree that you ultimately got?
Yeah, I love it. You know, it's funny. I think I'm one of the few people that am actually doing what I studied in college. So what I studied is definitely what I do now. But, I think where I ended up in those two majors, they were the classes I excelled in and really enjoyed, which I think is hopefully what happens with most students. But I joke to this day that my psychology minor is one of my superpowers for sure. You could really, I'm a productivity consultant, and you could really Google productivity hacks, right? You could Google what are productivity hacks and then try to apply them. But what I find is it's really understanding what's going to work for an individual or what's going to work for a team and what's going to stick and stay and be part of their ongoing lifelong habits. That is the key differentiator, right? And so that's where my psychology minor comes in, because all my clients are so drastically different. Some advice for one is definitely not going to work for another. So I'm really trying to understand how they think and what I think will work for them. And it's super fun. I love it. People get a little nervous though. They think I'm going to do some psychotherapy, which I don't have that kind of degree.
Right. Yeah, I'm thinking that leads into the next thought that I had, which is I'm assuming that the psychology hasn't, for example, I have an engineering background, but I work in marketing now. And I feel like I still think in spreadsheets and systems and whatnot, which is different to maybe a marketer that came from a creative or writing or different background. How would you say that psychology or that background or the way of thinking affects how you approach business? And maybe if you've come across other productivity people, how you kind of have a different spin on it with that additional perspective?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've had a number of clients say to me that they think my technology background is really pretty pivotal for them, and they also think my psychology. So there is something in there, and I think it goes back to what I was saying. It's just in many cases it's being realistic what's going to work for the person. So one of the biggest things I see with leaders, I love working with leaders, but often they will assume everybody works the way they work or should work the way they work, and they don't realize that people are wired very differently. And so I think I get in and I pretty quickly figure out how this person thinks and what I think will be successful. And it allows me, quite honestly, for my coaching not to take that long, because we can pretty quickly figure out what's going to work for this person.
Because one of the things I'm very, I don't want to say obsessed with, but I think a lot about is our mindset for things. Mm-hmm. I'm assuming it ties in obviously psychology and your mindset, but how do you get things to stick, or like habits to stick around instead of like the number of times that I've, and everybody's experienced this, where you are all excited about a new process or project management or task or to-do calendar or whatever, and you get into it and you do it for like a month or maybe 2 or 3 months, but we start to fizzle out after, or at least I start to fizzle out after a while. Does that say something about me as a person? Or is that like, what do I need to do to identify those, the things that I want to stick, or because obviously you let things die that don't serve you anymore, but things that are like, I know this is good for me, but I can't continue to do it. Why is that?
So sometimes people pick the wrong things for them, which is why, often people will complain that I read a bunch of books and I tried to do everything they told me to do. But again, it's about being realistic, what's going to work for you. So in some of those situations, you might be picking the wrong solutions for your personality and the way you work. And so it's just too much of a struggle. The second part is the way that I work with my clients is I'll suggest things for them to try, and then the expectation is over the next month they're going to be experimenting and working on those things. And at the next appointment, we're going to do an evaluation, right? What's working, what's not working. And over that 3 or 4 month period, they're really starting to change their habits. And so just by being accountable to me and needing to do it for a month, so they're going to report in, they're going to have time to really practice it. And the stuff that really works, you're typically never going to stop doing it, right? Like if you end up being less stressed or having more time in your day, it's just going to be part of your routine for the rest of your life. And so I think it's a combination of picking the right things for the person and then having them have time to practice, see the value of it, and then they get hooked. Also, there's also one of the benefits that coaching, I think, is we tweak stuff too. Because if I was coaching you maybe, and during that check-in you might say, I like this part of this, but this part I hate, I would tweak it, because that tells me a flag is being raised, like you're probably not going to stay with it if it's a chore for you. So we might tweak it just slightly, or pay attention to what part of it you like or what part of it is working, and what might be a different solution that uses that piece but gets rid of the piece that you don't want. So it's very customizable. And I do have some clients that I think there are a very small percentage of people that they just want to change it up every once in a while, right? And try something new and different. And there's not much I can really do about that. But I actually think that's a really small percentage. Most people are super happy when they get a productivity hack that works for them.
So I have more to talk about with productivity, but first I want to ask one final question on just kind of your background. But you had quite the resume of working with some pretty major companies and organizations. With that experience that you have and having solved all sorts of interesting problems, what's like the most enjoyable client or problem that you love solving? Like, who's your ideal customer, so to speak?
Yeah, my ideal client is definitely working with the most senior person in a company. So typically the CEO or whatever senior leader, and and getting them to test out some of the ideas and role model those ideas, and then they start to share the love, and it becomes this fabulous trickle effect through the organization. So I've kind of figured out who my avatar ideal client is, and typically they're very decisive. They're very caring about people in their organization. When they approach me, they're looking for maybe help themselves, but they're looking for, how do I make a better work environment for my employees? They're driving things more from an employee engagement standpoint versus from, I want my people to work longer hours, or more from a production standpoint. So I can pretty quickly spot my ideal clients that I want to partner with. But my goal is really to partner with them, and they see pretty quickly through one-on-one coaching the value of the service, and then it just ends up spinning off more business. I end up typically then coaching everybody on the leadership team, and we spin off like process improvement projects or technology projects, do company-wide training. It's just like the perfect place for me to start.
That's awesome. So productivity, what is productivity. You hear, and I'm going to also say, I hear, reports in business journals or, articles that I read about how like productivity was up during COVID or whatever the situation is, What is that? And I'm sure there's slightly different definitions, but what's your definition of productivity?
Yeah, there's different definitions. I mean, in industries where you could actually truly measure it, like maybe a law firm, and they could track billable hours, that's what they probably are talking about from a productivity standpoint is, are they hitting billable hours? But productivity in general is just, are my people working as efficiently as possible? And it's a really tricky thing to measure. We've gone through very different iterations on how you actually measure increase in productivity. But in general, my definition of productivity is it's really grounded on organizational principles. So it's about really organizing your time, organizing your priorities, organizing your data, your tasks, your workflow, so that you can work as efficiently as possible. So that's how I explain productivity.
I like that idea more, and that makes me think. Is it fair to say that on days where I feel like I'm getting energy from the work that I'm doing, is that possibly an indicator that I'm being productive? I guess or is that a sign of you are? I'm thinking you could be doing something that's not productive for the sake of the business, but you're just really efficient at whatever you're doing and you're getting energy from that. Is that unrelated to being productive, or is that kind of an indicator of you are in the zone, or you're working with systems and tools and an organizational structure that's giving you energy or working for you? Does that make sense, or am I going the wrong direction with that?
Yeah. No, let me see if I can understand it. So, one of the best productivity hacks, no question, is to be having a job and responsibilities in an area where you love the actual work. There's no doubt. And so one of my favorite productivity hacks when I'm coaching any leader is if they are constantly procrastinating a particular task, I'm like, let's delegate this or automate it because you have that lever you can pull. But you're absolutely right, Chris. If you, for most people, giving them the work that they love to do, you can really drive productivity because they're super excited, they want to do it. We're all so busy these days, we can super easily procrastinate the stuff we don't want to do. And so when I see clients constantly procrastinating something over and over again, there's not much I can do to actually motivate them. I have a couple hacks I can do, but if it's a leader, again, I would say, let's look at how we automate this or delegate it. Some strategies, I guess, since I opened that door, if you did have some tasks that you weren't super passionate and excited about, but you had to do it, there are some strategies like the Pomodoro method, if you've heard of that, which is the concept of focusing on something for maybe 20, 25 minutes and then getting a 5-minute break. And so you can kind of change your mindset and say, okay, I can do this for 20 minutes, right? I can focus on this god-awful task for 20 minutes and then I'm going to reward myself with a coffee. Or there's different strategies, but there's nothing better than being in your zone, doing what you love, and just cranking out good work. You would certainly want to make sure that where you're focused is the top priority for what you're supposed to be doing, obviously. So if you're cranking away at reading Facebook and that's not what you're supposed to do for a job, then obviously you're not productive. But if in the scheme of all the things you're supposed to be accomplishing, what your priorities are, if you get in your zone and you're cranking there, then that's peak productivity for sure.
Have you heard of Dan Sullivan?
I've heard the name. Tell me who that is again.
I think he's got a couple different books, but one of the books that this is making me think of is Who, Not How.
Oh, you know what? I need to read that. I think I've heard that before, but I haven't read it.
Yeah, my 30-second summary would be basically school teaches us to, when we hear of a problem, we are taught in school to figure out how am I going to solve this problem? And the basic principle of the book is that's a really bad way to approach most things in life. And it's much more effective to, as soon as you come up with a problem that you need to solve, say, who do I know that could help solve this problem? And then go immediately talk to those people, because you're probably going to, even if they don't end up solving it for you, which sometimes is the case, and that could be finding a specialist or whatever, you oftentimes cut through, hours and hours of research that you're doing on your own instead of just going to the person that has that expertise or that skill. But the one thing that Dan Sullivan also says is there's this culture of procrastinate, or like this habit of procrastination that is just rampant in everyone. Everyone procrastinates, but we all pretend like it's not that big of a deal for us. And he says that we need to flip that, and because he views procrastination as this amazing gift that we have to tell us what we shouldn't be doing. Because it's like I think it might be worded differently when he describes this, but it's more like if I notice myself continuously procrastinating QuickBooks or entering in my transactions, because I never do it, and I just don't like it. He's saying that's someone else's gift, and you shouldn't be doing that. You need to give that to that person, whoever they are out there, to allow them to do that. And it could be the same thing for, writing, or if I have to write blogs for my website or manage people. Like, we all have those things that we procrastinate, and instead of feeling guilty about it, flip it and turning into like, ooh, this is another thing that I should probably delegate or have someone else take from me, so I don't have to feel guilty that I'm not doing it, because that's not my gift or skill.
I love that spin. Yeah, Dan and I would definitely agree. I like the way he spins it a little differently. I typically tell my clients, think about the things that truly only you can do, because I also want them to take tasks that are maybe they love doing, but they shouldn't be doing, right? I don't want a CEO like putting together the graphics on a PowerPoint. So even if they think that's super fun, like, it's probably not the best use of their brain, right? So I typically say, what are the things that only you can do within the organization? Everything else should be delegated or automated, so that you're maximizing your talents. And my philosophy on procrastination is I really believe very much right now that this very reactive world that we're living in, where everybody's got a fire, everything's urgent, is truly a procrastination strategy. It's just way more fun to put out a fire than it is to do my budget or whatever I don't want to do. And I think we're sort of all caught in this trap, and we're having accountability issues across every organization. And part of it is people don't know how to organize their tasks. People don't know how to keep people accountable. And quite honestly, there's always a good excuse on something else you worked on instead, that somebody will go, oh yeah, no, that customer did have an issue that day, right? So that's a good excuse not to have gotten your project done.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So I like the additional things you added. It's like, yes, you might love doing something, and that's great that you're so good at it, but should you be doing it? And then there's the other side of the thing where I guess potentially there's stuff that you don't like doing, and it might be okay to have someone help you do that task. But sometimes we just have to, you're the CEO, get it done. Like, that's your job to do X, Y, Z. Sorry, that's what you signed up for, right?
Yeah, I would definitely. I try wherever possible, though. I'd much rather have people working on what they want to work on. So again, that's why coaching leaders is super easy, because anything that you're doing is ultimately a great development area for somebody who's going to grow into your position. So why not take the stuff that's required in that position that you don't like doing,
coach someone else up on it?
To train that person. But typically, maybe strategic, innovative thinking, or, if you think about why exactly this person was hired and what is it that only they could do that they can't delegate, that is where they should be spending more time, for sure.
Right. That's awesome. So one of the things I've heard you emphasize is creating a culture of productivity, but specifically eliminating unnecessary interruptions, emails, non-essential work. Can you tell me a little more about that? Yeah.
So, I come in a lot and I'll come in and do a company training and, share some tidbits. And I every single time we'll have a couple employees come up to me and be like, Jan, I love these ideas. I really wish we could do this, but they're not part of our culture. It's not part of our culture to be able to block time for an hour, turn off notifications, and because everybody thinks everything's urgent, right? So I've learned now, really, in my presentations, I'm always targeting the leadership first. So my topic now is create a culture of productivity starting at the top. Because if they're not role modeling, they're not empowering and telling people, yes, this is acceptable, nothing's really going to change. And the real power from productivity is when you create a really respectful work environment where people do have the ability to say, you know what, that's not that urgent. I'm going to stay focused on what I'm doing for an hour. When I come up for breath, I can shift gears and help you with whatever your issues are. But whatever you think is urgent doesn't make sense to interrupt me during that focus time. Let me back up. In order to do that right, you have to have a conversation in your organization about what is truly that important that it makes sense to interrupt somebody else. Because on average, when you interrupt somebody, you cause them to lose about 23 minutes. If I was really kind of in a quiet space, wrapping my head around a topic or something, and somebody interrupts me, lots of studies that show the time loss that happens there. So there needs to be a conversation across the organization on what is truly that important that it makes sense for me to cause the CEO to lose 23 minutes. Like, what is that important? Otherwise, then, and I call that, whatever that is, an emergency. So I introduce a new term to the organization, and then the organization needs to define then what exactly does, when something is urgent, so it's not quite that quick of a turnaround. When something is urgent, what does that mean in our organization? Is that end of day? Is it 24 hours? Is it 2 days? And so coming up with a common language so everybody has the same definition is really part of creating a culture. And part of where we get into this issue is I'm a huge fan of the younger generation. I mean, amazing talent and everything. But you have to think about the fact that they've been brought up in an environment where they order something on Amazon and it's on the doorstep the next morning. So they've grown up in an ASAP environment. So unless leadership is going to do a reset and say, hey, we don't do everything ASAP. There's certain things that need to be ASAP, but everything's not ASAP. We all come at it from it with a different perspective. So coming up with definitions of what's so darn important, what's a true emergency in my business, it makes sense to cause somebody to lose time. And that's okay. And there are examples of that. But then otherwise, if it comes into the urgent category, what's that look like? Again, is it end of day? If so, then I should be able to stay focused for an hour uninterrupted. When I come up for air, I can see what's going on in the world and then maybe address the urgent issue there. So it's just getting us to slow down a little bit, trying to get our non-planners to be planners. My definition, I facilitate this conversation with a number of leadership teams, and every time we come back with the same definition of what's an emergency. First part is every minute you wait is time sensitive. So it couldn't wait an hour. So that typically would be safety, someone's hurt. It could be a manufacturing line is down or a construction crew is halted or, something, big. But the second part of the definition is my favorite part, which is it's not an emergency if it could have been planned. Because the non-planners are the ones coming in and saying, hey, I have a big customer meeting this afternoon. I need these numbers. And if the people can say, well, when did you find out about the customer meeting? And they say, well, 3 days ago. Then you can say, well, then it's not an emergency. Like, you could have told me 2 days ago you needed the numbers. So it's just about creating a more respectful environment, trying to get people a little bit better at planning. And man, that spikes not just productivity, but job satisfaction. Because most people...
Nobody likes the urgent, hey, can you send this over to me in the next 15 minutes?
The procrastinators do. They like I couldn't do my budgeting because, Joe from sales needed his sales numbers.
Yeah, exactly. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I like that. So it's emergency, urgent, and then everything else?
Yeah, and then it's, I have a grid that I often will show in a leadership meeting, and I talk about the importance of communicating if it's not an emergency and it's not urgent, when exactly do you need it? Because what happens all the time is people still drop everything to work on something if a leader asks for it. So it's equally important to say, I need this, a week from Friday. And just give you a little simple hack. Just put the deadline in the subject line of the email too. Because right now, everybody puts deadlines in the very bottom of an email. And if I've read the whole email, even though you don't need it for 2 weeks, I'm probably still just going to do it right then because I took the time to read the email. So simple little hacks like that can make a difference and allow people to kind of stay focused on their most important work and then schedule in other stuff when it makes sense.
That's awesome. So email is something, I like that, the idea of the due date. I talked to a guy, another business owner, who says that they just outlawed email. No intercompany email, no email allowed. And he actually said they're quite good at it. They have, obviously, you can't just say no email and not provide an alternative to communicating.
Right. Yeah.
But they had a series of project management, and then they also had like a data analytics dashboard that allowed for communicating on issues.
Perfect. Yeah.
But the thing that I thought was amazing is, like, when I think about how many emails I get that are not spam, it's I feel like upwards of 50 a day, and which I know is not a lot for most people, but these are all things that people are expecting me to respond to like answer, solve, whatever. And then the worst thing is when it's like back and forth on like, hey, can you send me that file? Which file are you talking about? And like that over email is really, really not good. But all that aside, do you encourage, or have you had clients that have tried out the no email solution as like one distraction to eliminate? Or is it a good idea to aspire to minimize that, or how? And if so, how do you do that?
Yeah, this is a fun conversation. So 90% of the time when I get hired and I ask my coaching client or whatever, if I'm doing training, what their biggest issue is, it's usually email. And my personal opinion is that email is a symptom of problems. It's not really the problem. So I love looking at somebody's email because I can really see the way they work. I can see if they're a perfectionist or procrastinator. I can see where they're not leveraging technology properly. But we live in a very, very fabulous age where we have new and improved communication tools, which not every organization is taking advantage of, that are a much more efficient way of communicating. And so what's definitely going to be happening is all of the internal communication within companies is going to be leaving email and going into like the Microsoft Teams environment or the Google Workspace environment. And so email is going to stick around and be more for external communication. So vendors, suppliers, customers, little by little, all of those conversations will move into these centralized environments as well. But for a while, for many years, we're still going to have email for external, which is going to make it less burdensome because it's going to be a smaller number and all that. And what makes these new communication tools so brilliant is they're just designed for us to work in a team environment. Email, when it was developed, we just all worked more independently. But now that we're doing all this collaborating and communicating together, email is just being abused. And so, for instance, within like the Microsoft 365 environment, what's going to happen is a couple things. It's right now, if I were to send out an email to like 5 people and ask for their opinion about a PowerPoint, I would get 5 emails back, and let's just assume they reply all because that's what everybody does. And so all of us are going to now have 5 emails. We have to decide what to do. Am I going to file it away? Am I going to delete it, leave it hanging out in my inbox? And in this new environment, it's like a 180. It's a centralized inbox that stays. Nobody maintains it. And it becomes a knowledge base for everybody in the company for that particular conversation. And I'll explain that in a second. But the other thing that's great is it's improved communication tools. Because right now, if I were to say, give me your opinion on this PowerPoint, I'm going to have 5 paragraphs I have to do, where's Waldo, and look for positive or negative words in it. In the new environment, I would say, give me a thumbs up or thumbs down if you like it. I could quickly see 5 thumbs up and I'm good. So it's just much more efficient. And it's also right now, if you think about email is like a push technology. So let's say you're working on like 5 different projects and only one of them really was super important to you. The others, you want to stay abreast of, but you don't have to keep tabs on it every day. In email, the projects are going to be pushing out information, and you basically have to read and keep up to get it out of your face.
On everything, right?
Yeah. In this environment,
you don't know if it's important or not.
100%. In this environment, you can push out stuff that's important, but otherwise, when I'm in the mood to read up on that project, I can go in and read. And so in the new environment, it's more, think of it like communication channels that are all around particular processes within your organization. So they're also organized. Again, productivity is foundation or organization. It's organizing the conversations in these channels, where right now email is like this crazy hodgepodge, right? Of like everything's mixed together. And over here, it's all really sort of organized. And I'm super excited. So we do a lot helping companies leverage the power of Microsoft 365 to drive productivity and exactly these kind of things. So no, I don't think email is going away. I don't think it should go away. It plays a really important role. It's just being abused right now. And once people figure out really how to run their business more efficiently and leverage the right sort of tools, email is going to go back to being a really important tool for sure.
So when you're talking about this, the new environment, is this something that you like your series of tools that you recommend, or is it is it a series of apps and softwares, or are you just saying like the direction that businesses are moving is towards this idea of like siloed by department or process or system, and having like conversation on those individual topics? Does that make sense?
Well, so
what is the new environment? I guess is a simpler question.
Okay. So within Microsoft, they've created Microsoft 365. Within Google, Google's created Google Workspace. It all started with Slack. You maybe have heard of Slack. Slack was one of the first companies that came out with a new and different way for us to communicate. So Google and Microsoft are like, holy crap, we're losing market share, right? So they basically are developing something very similar. We know Microsoft. That's the technology that we actually know. Google is catching up. I don't think they're actually right there yet. Chris, are you still there?
Yep. Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, okay.
I can hear you just fine.
Okay, perfect. So, so lucky for us, what's really happened is that we have been evolving from being individual contributors to now working in a network of teams. And lucky for us, the tech companies saw this coming. And so they're like, we need better tools. And these tools have actually been around for a little bit now, but with COVID, we were all forced into, like those that are in the Microsoft world, were forced into using Microsoft Teams as a video tool. And so they've already dipped their toe into this new technology. They just often are completely unaware of what they're paying for currently. So my big dog and pony show right now is not just general time management, effective delegation, all the stuff I've done for years, but it's also raising the awareness of the senior leaders about the technology that they're already paying for, that they should be looking into. And I'm not an advocate of roll out technology just because you have it, but you need to identify what exactly are your biggest business issues. And if you already have this technology that can help you solve it, then let's prioritize looking into it, right? But there's a lot out there.
So we're in the Google world at Webfoot, and I am familiar with Slack. I have not used Microsoft Teams other than joining a virtual meeting that somebody else initiated. But is Microsoft creating like a Slack equivalent, basically?
Yeah. Plus more.
Just
plus
all within. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. They have a Slack component. But on top of it, they've created, really think of it as like a communication and collaboration hub where teams can come together to work more effectively. So everything that's in Slack, which is a new way of communicating, plus great task management tools, great digital notebooks, that all the teams should be using and really all of this drives productivity. So we're super. Microsoft should pay me.
I was going to say.
I was a Google shop, and I switched over about a year and a half ago because 365 is so powerful. Google will catch up. They're just not there right now, in my personal opinion. But what makes Microsoft really good is it's really tightly integrated, so all the pieces work together well. What Google has done very well for years, though, is they play really well with third-party vendors, outside software companies. So they've got kind of a hodgepodge solution that also works, pretty well together.
So I'm a tech junkie. I love technology and automation and all that stuff. What other apps outside of Microsoft Teams, for example, or Slack, are you a big fan of? And this could be like, I'm thinking in the world of like Asana, Basecamp. Those are things that I think are in the productivity world or would be in that classification on the App Store. What other apps or things are you like, ooh, this is a really cool app for this particular purpose? Maybe not for everybody, but just some of your favorites.
Yeah, no, I can think of two of my favorites that I would tell everybody should use. So, well, one, everybody should be using, I think, a password manager. Because you cannot keep track of all. You just need to have unique passwords for everything, and there's no way you're going to remember them all. So everybody's writing them down on pieces of paper, which is very insecure. So a password manager, my friends in the techie world, the security world, say they work great, they're secure. So that will save you, and they help just automatic log you on to all your different tools. You just need to remember the master password, so highly recommend that. I'm a huge fan of simple tools like Grammarly. I have a number of clients that will spend time like triple checking their wording and their grammar. I'm like, why would you do that? There's great tools that will do it automatically. And everybody should have a to-do list of sorts. The world's moving too fast. Our brains are just not keeping up. And so within the Microsoft world, I'd recommend the To-Do app, Microsoft To-Do. In the Google world, it could be Todoist, Trello. There's a number of different ones, but everybody needs a digital to-do app would be my recommendation, because you can also leverage voice-to-text technology in them. Because half the to-dos that pop in your head when you're driving home or you're kind of away from your desk, and it's nice just to be able to say, hey Siri, pull up my to-do app, and then just brain dump what's there, so you can go back to talking to your family and not be preoccupied thinking about your task list while you're at home.
That's this is maybe a tangent. It's how my mind works, but I completely agree that half of the to-dos, it's when you're driving, in the shower, waking up. For me, it's like right before going to bed. I'm falling asleep, and my mind's shutting down. And I'm like, oh, I need to remember to write that down. And I have when I'm more, I would say, stressed, or there's just more going on at work. I literally have just been like, okay, I'm not falling asleep, and I'll just write everything that's spinning around in my head on a piece of paper to just kind of give myself permission to check out. Because I'll just if I don't forget this, don't forget this, don't forget this. But I'm assuming that when you are, this is the words coming back to the topic of productivity, but when you are organized and productive, I have to assume that affects the rest of your health, sleep, everything. Seems like it would be better when you are not feeling forgetful or worried that you dropped something, correct? Yeah. We actually have some really great metrics. We never quite have known how to track the ROI of what we do. And we finally decided, let's just start asking 4 questions of everybody we coach, everybody we train. And there's 2 quantitative, 2 qualitative. Quantitative ones are, are you saving money if you're in a cost position, or generating money if you're in a revenue generating role? The second one is, do you have more time back in your day, from all these productivity strategies? And then the 2 qualitative ones are, is your job satisfaction going up and your stress going down? And I have to say the 2 qualitative answers have been the ones to me that have been really powerful. On average, by tracking metrics, we know that we deliver a 10% bump in productivity. We have some people that don't do much. We have some people that knock it out of the park. On average, it's about 10% bump, which is like getting a month back in your year. So it's pretty good ROI. But on the qualitative side, we had 2 clients this year, 2 clients this year that hired us to drive productivity. They're like, I need more time in my day, that kind of stuff. And both of them said ultimately that their job satisfaction went up and their stress went down by over 50%. One of them was 81 to 100% bump. So you hit on the head. My personal opinion right now is productivity and employee engagement are so tightly linked. And it's such a win-win for organizations right now to focus on helping their employees be more productive, because job satisfaction goes up. And so these people will want to stay at that place. I have so many clients that are always like, Jen, I've just got to leave this place. I never have quiet, uninterrupted time to do my work. And there's just high stress. And so the more you can do to provide a productive environment, people are going to want to stay. So super important strategy in this really tight job market for sure. I'm assuming that so we make our employees more efficient and they're more productive, but the part that improves the satisfaction of the worker is maybe not working as many hours, right? Or is it just people genuinely feel happier and they'll work more hours when they are productive? Is it like a trade-off? Like, I want to be more productive so I have more time with my family? Or, and I guess I'm taking it to the extreme of like, is it a noble cause to say, and maybe you don't announce this to the company, but we're going to work on being so productive so that maybe we can only work 4 days a week, or everyone works 35 hours a week. And that's like the goal, to still get everything done that we need to get done, but we're going to significantly cut back hours. Is that like a strategy that people use or you'd recommend? Or is it more of just like the hours in a week is less important? It's just letting people be effective during the hours that they are working?
It depends what the goal is for the person. So, I myself and my team, ultimately, we're going to give you more time back in your day. What you decide to do with that is up to you. Some of my clients want more time so they can think more strategically about their business. So they're not going to shrink their hours. They're just going to have more time to focus on working on the business, the bigger things. Some of my clients are overweight. They're on the verge of divorce because they're never home, or they can't, they're constantly working at home. So I would hope for them, they're going to be able to get their job done at work and then come home and have time to work out and be engaged. So it really depends on the priorities for why we're being hired, quite honestly. But for most people, I just think people want to go home at the end of the day feeling like they did a really good day's work. And most people don't feel that way. They come home thinking, I went into the day thinking I was going to work on this project, and I was derailed, and I was in back-to-back meetings, and so now I have to do that on Saturday. And so it's just a really stressful environment. So there's a lot of really hardworking, task-oriented people that want to get their job done and do it well. And it's a frustrating environment for them. And there's a lot of relationship-oriented people who are like, hey, this is fun, let's talk. It's more fun than doing my projects. But there's lots of opportunities to make people happy.
That's awesome. And so at Webfoot, we have a marketing team. I'm the marketing director, and we've got 5 other people, and then 4 inbound sales reps that are managed by 5 of or a couple of the people that I manage. So in total, the marketing department is 10 people. We go back and forth with Asana is one of the projects or the softwares that we're using, or we are attempting to use. And I feel like one of the for before I go into that specific example, for this group and in my world, this group of 10 people that we're constantly just messaging people and trying and collaborating, right? We're doing that effectively, I think, for the most part. But how do you get out of the downward spiral of fires outside of, or is there any other tasks or suggestions outside of what you mentioned where you're trying to turn people into planners, the consistent language, emergency, urgent? What other tools do you have for getting people or getting a group of people that are putting out fires to kind of rise above that and avoid that cycle?
Yeah. So one, it's awesome you guys are exploring Asana. It's a great tool, and it plays really well in the Google environment. And so I think right now there's a big shortage of people who truly understand how to plan. I don't think there is anybody that would tell me that planning is stupid, but I just don't think people know how to do it and how to build it into their routine. So part of it is having a good tool that you can use, but if you don't really have the routines on when to update it and when to refer to it, then you're missing a piece. So one of the things I always tell people is you should have, let's say that you're a morning person, and so I'm going to tell you first thing in the morning you should be blocking your time for what I call focus time, which is to do your kind of deeper thinking when your brain is super on, highly charged. But then at the end of the day, you should block your calendar. Let's say you want to end your day at 5 o'clock. Block your calendar like 4:30 to 5. And I call it regroup and plan. And what that means is stop doing. Stop, going and doing one more thing. And that's when you would do what you're doing at night. You would brain dump what's in my head, get it into Asana. What are all the tasks I need to schedule? Let's get my email cleared out so I've got only the emails in there that I still need to respond to. Let's update my calendar. And then let me take a step back and identify, let me look at Asana. Maybe I need to also look at my CRM tool, my customer relationship management tool if I'm in sales, But there might be a couple places you need to look. But where do I look? Where do I have all my to-dos? And I'm going to look at that and say, okay, what are the 3 most important things that I would work on tomorrow? And so that's how you're kind of creating this planning process. You got to get organized, get everything down in your systems. And if you don't have systems, again, that's a gap. But get them in your systems and then take a step back. The other piece I see is missing for a lot of people is a lot of people will just look like a day or 2 out to decide what to work on tomorrow. And you have to look out at least 2 weeks, because often there's something that you've got to start tomorrow because maybe it needs to go back and forth with other people. And if you don't start it tomorrow, you're going to be behind schedule. So I'm actually, one of my big training right now is teaching everyday leaders kind of basic planning and project management concepts, because it's a big gap. So I love that you guys are bringing in a new tool, but you definitely want to teach people to understand how to plan appropriately, to load the tool, and how to use the tool, kind of the process around it.
And so I love the decompress, whatever, at the end of the day. What was the first thing that you mentioned at the beginning of? I
call it regroup and plan. So regroup just means get it all out of your head and get it into your tools, like your Asana. And then it's plan, and then it's like assess what all you're being asked to do, looking out like 2 weeks, and then say, okay, what are the top 3 things I'm going to do tomorrow? If you don't have a set plan of what you're going to work on the next day, typically you will be highly reactionary. Emails will come in, and you'll just be working on that. And I always say that typically when you're responding to an email, a text message, something else, you're typically helping that person be productive. You're not necessarily working on your most important work. You'll rationalize you're being productive, and you're being productive. You're just not doing your most important work. So coming in with a plan is super important.
And I'm assuming that part of this 30 minutes at the end of the day, it would be a good idea to look at your calendar and actually put in like 2 hours tomorrow. I'm going to work on, my big rock task, whatever. Or on next Thursday, I need to make sure I schedule this meeting with so-and-so because they're going to need input on this project. That's the type of stuff you want to make sure, as far as the time span that you're looking out into the future.
Yeah, you definitely want to be loading your calendar with, like if you have a huge project and you're going to need to allocate 4 hours to it, get your calendar blocked for it. But personally, I feel like our priorities shift so much and constantly. I'm more of an advocate of you blocking your calendar every day for a generic thing, like I call it focus time. And when you're identifying your top 3 priorities, one of those things is going to be the thing you're going to do during that time. Like that's the time of day that I think the best. I'm the most creative, innovative, analytical. And one of the top 3 priorities I'm going to pick is going to be this bigger, kind of headier thing that I'm going to do during that time. Because I just feel like if you planned out your week, by the time you got to Wednesday, your priorities have shifted. And then you have to update your calendar. So just block time.
And you're wasting more time,
Yeah, so block time for most important work, and then daily kind of analyze, okay, what's the most important thing tomorrow? That's my recommendation. If you've got a system that works with you, stay with it for sure.
That's awesome. So my thought immediately goes to, okay, so you're inspiring me to do some of the things you're talking about, and but I was looking for it, right? Yeah. I have that intrinsic motivation. Yes. So I always think about, now I need to roll this out to the people that I manage. Yeah. And how do I make sure that this is presented in a way, or is it like a workshop? I have a lot of other thoughts, but if I know as a leader I want to do this, how do you get your team involved and get them to buy into it and get excited about it and try it like I am?
Yeah, so one of the best things to do is for you, again, my favorite thing to do is like coach the CEO and get them to be experimenting. And then we do a training session. And when I say, hey, maybe you should do this regroup and plan thing, somebody that I've coached that's in a respectable leader position is like, oh my gosh, that was a game changer. You guys all need to do it, right? So it's about getting the groundswell going and having like people experiment with stuff and then tell their colleagues like, oh, for sure, you should try this. You should do this. This is the impact it's had. And that's how you get that going. You'll never get to like 100%. You're going to have the people who are like, I hate technology. I'm never going to get there. I take that back. When you're moving away from like email to a new communication tool, everybody has to get on board there. But as far as like, let's say getting everybody on to using a digital to-do app, there might be something people don't want to do. As long as you can get like 80% of your organization using these best practices, you'll see massive bumps in productivity for sure. So
my thought is pick try something out myself for a week or two, whatever, and then throw out a nugget at the meeting. It's like, hey, I've been experimenting with this, productivity hack. I don't know if any of you guys want to try this out and tell us how it goes next week. But even the simple 30 minutes at the end of the day, think about what you did that day. Look at your calendar. Think about what's the most important. For example, we do stand-ups in the morning, so they're all virtual. So it's like, what are you going to work on today? And the very quickly just becomes and I'm speaking for myself, that I will oftentimes be like, oh shoot, 2 minutes before the huddle, what do I need to do today? And you're just scrambling to find something to do, instead of, you really should be coming up with what you're going to say in that huddle at the end of the previous day. And then you're just reading the note that you wrote down yesterday in that huddle the next morning. That's how I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, very organized. Yeah, I love that. Often what I see is people are jumping. People go from one meeting to another without sort of bringing closure to, okay, what's next? What's in my head? And
for
so
that
you have to
meeting,
kind of start all over every time.
Yep, that's a great point. Why do people resist? Or I don't know. This is more of the psychology side, I assume. Why do employees resist change, or how do you present it in a way to make it more appealing?
So, we're all at a different place in sort of the, risk aversion little list here, or whatever, continuum. And, if you think about the older generation, I'll put myself in it. I'm a boomer. We didn't grow up with technology quite with the way the younger generation did. So it's a bigger change. It's a scarier change. Conceptually, it's like, what the heck is a cloud? What do you mean things are in a cloud? What's that mean? So people, depending on where you are, people just need different help. So you could have some people, a lot of the younger generation, we could have in a training session about technology. They can hear it, then they get it. They're like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. And then they can go do it on their own. Whereas maybe some others might need a little bit more hand-holding to show them exactly how to do it. And everybody can get there. We just need different support depending on where we're at, is one thought. One of the biggest issues through change in a company, though, is you've got to have, again, strong leadership that's going to hold that baton. If you've ever studied change management, it's this circle, and there's a really pivotal point where leadership just has to keep going, come on, we can do it. And once you get over that little hump, then all of a sudden you see the spike in productivity. But that's, again, back to where I feel, for me, it's important to have the right sort of internal partner for me, an internal champion that believes in this and is respected, and they're going to help take my ideas and make them stick.
So last topic that I can think of before we move to the wrap-up questions, meetings. This is every week for marketing, and every department has their, we have a senior leadership team meeting weekly. There's a concrete department weekly management team meeting. So there's all these meetings that are just they are somewhat focused in topic, but for example, the marketing meeting that we have weekly, we're working on, a number of different initiatives, projects, website revamp, all these things that are ongoing all the time. And I feel like there's a disconnect between the meeting structure, which is kind of like a hodgepodge of topics, and this new environment that you're describing, where there's silos but intentional structure to that. I'm assuming that if you roll that new environment and expand it into how you structure meetings, there's probably a better way to do meetings.
Yeah, there's what I would say is a lot of companies are forced to do meetings right now because they don't have the right tools for easy decision making and for status updates. And both of those are solved by having this newer technology where you can get, quick decisions, quick status updates. But meetings are definitely still going to be around, and they're a super important, communication and collaboration tool. One of the big gaps that I see quite often, and I think if I heard you correctly, Chris, is that I don't think people define the objective of why they're meeting very often. And often we'll just fill in an agenda, but you really need to understand why are we actually meeting? Are we meeting to drive accountability? Are we meeting to build relationships? Are we meeting to improve the communication and collaboration in the team? But if you can't really articulate why exactly you're meeting, then your agenda is always going to be this weird hodgepodge. So, for instance, somebody asked me the other day, they're like, Jan, people do these icebreakers at meetings. Should we be doing that? And I said, well, what's the objective of your meeting? If the objective of your meeting is to build the relationships within the team because you work in a hybrid environment and you're never really at a water cooler or having lunch together, then yes, an icebreaker is a great thing to add to the agenda because part of the objective of that meeting is to build the cohesion within the team. And there's nothing that drives productivity better than building relationships. So you have to get everybody to know each other before they can get to like each other. And you have to like somebody before you can trust them. And so once you've gone through those tiers, then can you really drive productivity? Because I can lob it over the fence and know that they've got my back and they're going to do it. So defining a meeting objective is super important. So the new tech tools are going to solve some of the issues, but that is my other top topic right now: project management for leaders, how to leverage Microsoft 365, and how to run an effective meeting, because people don't know how to do it.
Yeah, I like that. My other crazy thought is that I'd want to experiment. I don't think we could turn off intercompany email across the whole company, but are you aware of any tools in Google or Microsoft where you could just not allow emails to be sent to your domain? So it's just if you need to send an email to someone at Webfoot, it just comes right back to you and or it doesn't even allow you to hit send because, you know what I'm saying? I wonder if that's a thing.
Just to stop the distractions or something? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, just basically assuming that we are in marketing, we have the ability to communicate through Asana, and we should be commenting and discussing things in Asana.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So it's when I am going to ping Taylor because I need something from her, and I would normally send an email or a chat, just not allow that to happen, or turn it off so you can only send emails
that's funny.
Interdepartmentally during before 9 a.m. and after 4 p.m. But during the working hours of the day, use the communication tool that we have.
Yeah, there's so many bells and whistles. There probably are little things we can turn on and off that will stop certain things. But you raise a really interesting piece of the conversation, Chris, that is another area where I feel like I'm talking a lot to leaders, is that when you're moving into new technology, like you're saying, we're moving into Asana, leaders need to really clarify what's our macro organizational plan. So the marketing team right now is going to be piloting Asana. So all of their internal communication needs to happen there. Everybody else, it's going to stay in email. But then next we're going to do sales. And so it's reiterating and clarifying what's happening where for which groups, because most software these days are, they can do a lot of things. So most CRMs now are introducing a project management tool set. So are we going to use the project management tool in our CRM, or are we going to use the project management tool within Microsoft 365? Or are we going to use Asana? And that's where there's a lot of confusion, which again drives productivity challenges. So explaining kind of the rollout plan, what's the tool we use for each particular function, that macro organizational plan is super helpful.
That's great. So moving to some wrap-up questions, what are you most proud of in your career so far?
So I think my overarching goal has always been to be a trusted partner for my clients, and I definitely think I'm there. Sadly, I'll probably start crying, but I lost a team member. And I went back to all my clients and said, hey, it's going to take me a while to rebuild. He was an amazingly brilliant person. I'm it's going to take me a while to rebuild. Go find other vendors, whatever. And they were all nope, we're waiting for you. And so I'm we want to work with you. We trust you. And I'm okay, this is exactly where I wanted to be. I wanted to be this like trusted partner for my clients where they're like, Jan's going to tell us what to do. And so I definitely feel like I've arrived, and I realize again, I'm partnering with like amazing CEOs that just know how to do it right. So I feel very lucky.
That's awesome. What book recommendations do you have?
I'm reading a really good one. I just finished it this week called Quiet. It's about introverts, which to me are, just 1/3 of our world is filled with these amazingly talented introverts. I had just coached an introvert recently, and it kind of opened my eyes to, how they could be leveraged so much more effectively. So I highly recommend it. Susan Cain, Cain. And it's a lot about, there's a lot about mindset and, our brains these days. It gets into a lot of that as well, but super interesting.
Awesome. And what is your favorite movie?
I don't have one. I thought about that. I have a number of favorite movie lines.
Oh yeah.
I don't have a favorite movie. My husband's favorite movie is It's a Wonderful Life. So he's super psyched that he gets his fix. It's that time of year. I don't think I have a favorite movie.
That's awesome. Give me one of your favorite quotes.
Oh, like we just in our family we always do it. Where like from Tommy Boy, where he gets hit in the head or whatever, and he's like, "Not so much here or here," stuff like that.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So anytime somebody's hurt in our family, we kind of do, not so much there.
Not so much here. That's awesome. You mentioned that you have a newsletter that has updates and whatnot for people to stay in tune of what you have coming up, seminars, talks. You've got a book coming out, correct?
Yeah. Yep.
Tell me a little bit about that.
The book is basically everything we've been talking about. So it's about really how to create a culture of productivity. I really don't want to create little pockets of having that one person be productive and that one person. I really want it to become part of the culture. And again, like everybody's doing it, everybody's respectful. And so, it includes a little bit of all the stuff we've talked about, a little bit about technology, project management stuff. And
Awesome. So if someone wants to reach out to you, how do you recommend that they do that? What's your preferred method of communication?
Well, I think the easiest, probably just go to our website. So CTC, which stands for Create the Culture. So ctcproductivity.com, and on there you can fill out our contact page, or you can sign up for our newsletter. If you sign up for our newsletter, you'll find out when my book comes out. You'll find out we do monthly blogs. We do like what's my favorite resource, and I think Quiet might be the book I had in this one. And then once a month we do webinars on Microsoft 365. So you'll get information about the next one, and you can register for it as well.
Awesome. Well, Jan, this is, I'm like super excited. I feel like I made a list of notes that I'm going to be sharing with my wife and colleagues. So I appreciate this, and look forward to meeting you in Bend in a couple months. Yeah,
I'm excited too. Did you know I lived in Eugene for 5 years? I
did not know that.
Yeah, so I'm super excited. I get to go back and see some of my friends, which is wonderful.
That's awesome. Yeah, Webfoot, University of Oregon, the Ducks.
Yeah.
They used to be called back in like the early 1900s, just the Webfoots. And so Gavin and Travis that started Webfoot, they went to U of O. And so when they were trying to think of what to name their business, were like, let's call it Webfoot. The throwback to the homage to, the old Webfoot of the early days.
That's wonderful. Yeah, we're still huge Duck fans. I can't wait to be back. So thank you, Chris. This was super fun.
Yeah, thank you.